Welcome, everybody, to our first in a series that we're starting interviews of fascinating people leading tech. Myself, David Layton, Jessica Haas. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you.
Right, as we're kind of
Mhm.
coming into 2025, amazing things happening. That's why we're so excited to have our guest, Raymond Hegarty, here. And before we get into it, Raymond, let me have our AI announcer share a little bit about.
Strategist who has studied in Ireland and France. He has a bachelor's degree in electronic engineering, an MBA, a master's degree in medical AI, a postgraduate diploma in European law, and a master's degree in IP law. He has built IP-intensive businesses in Japan, Ireland, and Luxembourg, assembled and developed teams, and implemented processes and systems for exploitation of IP. He has executed several $billion of patent and trademark transactions and has managed international commercialization of a portfolio of 40,000 patents. Mr. Hegarty is the best-selling author of 3 books on IP strategy. He has advised the European Commission, the OECD, and policymakers in several countries on national and international innovation strategies. He currently advises CEOs of fast-growing technology and life science companies on IP strategy, is a regular conference speaker, and is connected to the global professional IP community. He has been recognized by IM Magazine since 2011 as one of the world's top 300 IP strategists. Welcome, Mr. Hegarty.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Raymond.
Um,
Yeah, every time I hear more about you, and we know each other well, but I'm like, oh, that's right, he did that, and just
mhm.
look at your background. Pretty incredible, just the journey. And I feel now, Raymond, like within the last 2 years, if we think about just how long you've been doing this type of thing in tech, I've been in tech, Jessica. It seems like now we're kind of on new frontiers.
Mhm.
And I'd love for you to share, yeah, just kind of maybe kick us off with a little bit about what you've been seeing lately.
Yeah, I've been doing this for decades, but the AI hype or the AI boom or the AI opportunity really has taken off in the last 2 years. And it's interesting to see the developments week by week as to how it's progressing.
For sure, Jessica.
Have you seen how AI changing how IP is thought of and how to and protections? Have you been seeing migrations in the trends?
Oh, there's been a lot of IP work, especially in the area of patents around patenting of AI related technologies. And there's a lot of discussion as well about inventorship and creators and is it a human or is it AI? And one of the interesting things about IP law is that the IP law is developed over hundreds of years, but AI is advancing, as I said, on a weekly basis. So it's very hard for IP law to keep up with the advances in AI. And one of the main concepts is that IP law was developed to protect human inventors, human creators, human innovators. And it hadn't really envisaged what would happen if machines started to think, which is what is looking like is happening now. So there are interesting imbalances coming between the current level of legislation, the current level of jurisprudence, and also what are the possibilities for AI.
That's fascinating because I remember hearing you talk during the WITI Summit Prompt 24 just recently, and I was really expecting a lot of legalese type of language, and you actually made it sound very approachable and understandable. So I'm really curious, when do companies come in to start using you? Like, when do
Ah,
they bring you in?
very interesting that you felt that. And my whole focus has been on intangibles. And the reason why I talk about intangibles more than just IP is because the companies that have developed over the last few decades tend to have a very, very high element of intangible value. Most of the companies I deal with, technology companies, life science companies, their intangible value is more than 90% of the value of the company. And most of the tools that people are learning in business school are still based back in the tangible age when you were managing fixed assets and you were managing raw materials. These days, you're talking about the assets that are inside people's heads. The raw materials are the creativity of the people. So, how can you capture that and make that available for everybody in the organization and generate value from that? And that's a totally new area. And that's the area that I work in.
Can you tell me a little more? Because I remember during your talk, you mentioned the four pillars and how they play together. And where I'm really curious is I know several small business owners where all their they have intangible assets and they don't even know where to begin. Can you kind of walk us through what that looks like to you and what you've seen?
Yes, the reason I talked about four pillars is because the typical types of intellectual property that apply to those companies are patents, trademarks, copyright, and trade secrets. But most people, when they talk about IP strategy, still seem to focus only on the patents. And that's fine. Like, don't get me wrong, I love patents. I've generated billions of dollars through patents. But if your strategy relies entirely on patents and you come across a competitor who's got the ability to undermine your patents, your whole business could be at risk. So that's the reason why I recommend the four pillars of having patents and trademarks and copyright and trade secrets and other pillars as well of other types of IP. So that even if your pillar of patents is attacked, that your business is still on a stable basis and that your strategy is robust and that your competitive advantage continues.
So I'm curious, when it comes to startups, for example, I was at Money 2020 recently and they were highlighting some really incredible startups. So let's say you have a Series A through D startup. How does how do the four pillars help or improve potential investor interest? Can you walk us through
Yes.
that a little bit?
Well, if you look at, for example, patents are something that are very close to my heart.
Hmm.
And if you want to get a patent granted, you have to go to a patent attorney and you write up your patent application, you file it with the patent office, it's examined over the years by the patent examiner, and maybe 3 or 4 years later, you could get your patent granted. For a lot of technology companies who are moving very quickly, they could be developing something that takes 9 months to develop, it's 9 months on the market, and then it's superseded by something else. So if you're talking about a life cycle of 18 months, but you can't get protection for 3 or 4 years, most people will think that patents are not relevant to them. So they need to think about other things. So they need to think about, have they a really clever name for this? So if it's a clever name or if there's some kind of a slogan around this, like Intel inside or McDonald's with I'm loving it, that's something that you could trademark and protect. So if you can get people to call it by its name, then you can have a trademark, and that's something which is more valuable IP.
Hmm.
When you're coming to generate patents, you have a lot of ideas behind the patents. And those ideas could be also trade secrets that give your company an advantage. And they would set you apart from other people. If you're talking about software or if you're talking about manuals, that the law of copyright used to be about books and movies and songs, but any kinds of creative acts, such as software creation or developing your manual, those things are protected by copyright. So you have many different aspects of IP that can protect what you're doing in your business. Does that all make sense?
It does. I
Definitely.
never thought of the software as part of copyright. That's fascinating.
And even sounds, right, Raymond? Because you said Intel inside and they have a, ding, ding, ding or something, right? I mean, that could be
Mhm.
part of your portfolio.
Oh, yes. Like if you got ba da ba ba ba, that's McDonald's. I'm
Mhm.
loving it. And that's a
Right.
trademark. So it's not
Interesting.
just copyright that it's a song, it's also a trademark because it's closely associated with the idea of McDonald's.
Yeah. No, I love that. And so Raymond, just because since we've gotten to know each other, like I always used to think of IP as, oh, lawyers, lots of money,
Mhm.
either I'm gonna, take this big leap or not. Trademarks may be a little easier, but I'm more thinking about patents because I didn't really know this whole world of trade secrets. But it almost seems like this isn't for attorney, for the attorneys or the division at the company that's the legal. This is falls into, I think, the business and the future of the company, whether it's under the CEO, the COO, probably, the leaders of tech.
Yes.
How have you been able to make that shift? Because I would think it would be just tough, oh, go talk to our attorneys, but there's this whole
Mhm.
strategy world. Like, are the investors getting this now? And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, if 90% of the value of your company is the intangibles, it now becomes a serious thing for the CEO. It becomes a serious thing for the CFO. And yes, there's a legal element to it as well. So, of course, for the specific legal components of it, you do need to involve your lawyers, you need to involve your patent attorneys. But that doesn't mean that you hand over all of your intangible value to that department. And with the best
Right.
will in the world, and lawyers agree with me on this, that lawyers are trained to hunt down risk and eliminate risk. But entrepreneurship is about embracing risk. So you've got a real conflict there that one part of the company is trying to avoid risk and shut it down. Another part of the company is embracing risk. Now, they're not being reckless about it, but they need to embrace risk if they want to get a greater return. And the idea of embracing risk goes against the training and instinct of lawyers. So it just doesn't make sense to me that you take what is the biggest and most valuable asset in your company and you leave it in the hands of the least entrepreneurial department of the company.
Right. Yeah. So, right. And then how do we get them? Because we have many witty members that are building companies, part of larger companies. How does the conversation go? Because really, this should be part of the business.
Mhm.
Sometimes they just kind of hear IP and then they're like, oh, I'll get this to our general counsel. So I'd love to hear, and just for our members too, that may be running intrapreneur programs at some of the larger companies, or they have a startup, they're getting funding. I mean, there's so many things moving fast now. What does that conversation look like? Do you almost call it something different than IP? I don't know.
Well, I tend to look for what are the expected outcomes. So, for example, if you are a Series B company, you're going to be going to a Series C funding at some stage. When you come to the funding, there's going to be due diligence. And the questions that you answered in Series B are going to be different from the questions you're going to get in Series C. And as you move up and as the stakes grow, you're going to be getting stricter and stricter questions. And what's happening is that because the value is 90% intangible, a lot of those questions are around the IP due diligence. So they
Mm,
are looking at things like the formal IP, like your patents and your trademarks and your confidentiality agreements. But they're looking at more than that as well. And they're looking at the knowledge that's inside the heads of your people. And if somebody walks out of the company, what happens to that knowledge? Does the knowledge stay in the company, or does the knowledge go with the person, or does the knowledge spread out to more places?
right. Which could just be such a huge asset now, I think, as a lot of these smaller AI companies specifically are starting. And I know this is much, very beyond AI, but I feel like many companies are being built and almost for their people where they'll get acquired by some of the larger companies. Some may be the tech, some they'll add a feature in OpenAI or Claude that could make that company disappear, but that doesn't mean that the people aren't as valuable as well as this portfolio to include to build value in the company.
Yes. And one of the things you need to think about when people are moving is that if somebody is hired from a rival company and they bring across trade secrets from that company could put an injunction on you. So you could have spent, millions of dollars in recruitment. You may have spent millions of dollars in sign-on bonuses. You may have these very, very high-level employees, and suddenly you have an injunction. You can't use them for 9 months, and you're still paying their salaries. Your
Mm,
management team is tied up in knots with all these legal actions going on. Your reputation isn't very good because it looks like you did something shady. So the idea that you can just bring in somebody and not worry about it can be problematic. So you need to really look after that you're respecting the trade secrets of other companies when employees come into you.
right.
And on the other side, when employees leave you, you have to make sure that on the exit that you have exit interviews with them so that you can get them to understand that even though they're not coming into you anymore, that there are certain responsibilities that will continue after they leave the company. So you need to have those exit interviews as well to make sure people are aware of those obligations on them. If somebody does leave the company, for example, a disgruntled former employee, it used to be that you'd have a trade secret, that you'd have a filing cabinet full of information, and that people would have to carry out, photocopies and everything. But these days, people can go out with a USB with a lot of the company information on that. And if you can't understand what trade secrets that employee had contact with, what trade secrets do they have the possibility of taking? Where could they take them to? And if you don't do something in the first 48 hours, those trade secrets are scattered to the four winds.
Right. And then once they're gone, they're kind of
They're
gone, right?
gone.
It's not even that employee anymore, it's whoever else.
Yes, and it could be such damage that even if you sue somebody afterwards, that the financial payment for this, even if you're successful, mightn't be enough to overcome the whole disaster to your company about this data being compromised.
So I'm
Right.
curious, for the employees coming into the new company that may have knowledge of trade secret, how can the new company prevent any conflict from the beginning? Is there a way to frame that out ahead?
Yes, so you need to be very careful in your hiring disciplines. So it's a combination of, the very good HR practices and, like we've mentioned the lawyers earlier, make sure your general counsel has run his or her eye over your procedures for onboarding people. And you make it very clear when you're taking on people that these are the policies that you follow and that you're going to be very clean about respecting other people's trade secrets. Just as when people are leaving, you want to make sure that your trade secrets are also protected on the exit.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I recruit and still do people, especially if they were developers and architects, our offer letter would read something like, we're not interested in any trade secrets or information is proprietary. We want you for your skills and your competence in this area. Like, is that enough to put in a letter now, or have things evolved just in our immediate world of AI?
Different companies are at different levels of sophistication, and clearly you're dealing with sophisticated companies. So the procedures that they are following may be enough. Now, everything evolves, and depending on the state of the circumstances and how sensitive. For example, if you take somebody from your direct rival, that's going to be a lot more sensitive than if you take somebody who's from a completely different industry. So you may need to treat them with different levels of sensitivity as they come in.
Interesting. And as we've seen, I think we see now so much more tech going on in non-tech industries, right? Like Ford is an
Yes.
example. And they may they may recruit someone out of Google or Apple or Microsoft. Have we seen much? I just haven't been paying, I just those don't come across my desk as far as the tech companies maybe suing for IP into some of the, more the
Yep. There's
consumer
yes. And the other thing as well is apart from company to company, you also have country to country. So you have quite a number of cases of foreign nationals in American companies who are caught at the airport on their way about to go back to their home country to bring lots of secrets from their employer. So there've been quite a number of well-publicized cases, and there are many more cases that aren't so well-publicized either because they want to deal with them quietly. But it's a serious issue, and when you talk about company to company or country to country, that you now have trade secrets and industrial espionage. And the laws on industrial espionage are very strict. If the penalties for industrial espionage can be up to 10 years imprisonment.
Wow.
And if you're doing industrial espionage on behalf of a foreign nation, it can be up to 15 years in prison.
And then would that apply for an executive at a company? Like if they work for, I won't put out a name, right? But if they work for Acme Company and they're an executive, so then that individual he could be, look, I'm just working for my company, but it would
It
be
could
on,
it could be, and if you're talking about patent infringement, this will
well,
go through a court case, and you could have 7 years of going through the court case, and then eventually comes through, and then the payment comes through. That's the company's money. But when you're talking about trade secrets, that's personal. It's not the company's money, and the company's money is not going to compensate an executive for the fact that he ends up having to spend years in prison.
right. No,
Mm.
that's crazy. And you had mentioned in past conversations, just even around China having updated their, excuse me, trade secret laws. So, I mean, this sounds like it's more internationally enforceable even than patents in many cases, trade secrets, huh?
Mhm.
Yes, it's China has updated their laws, Japan has updated their laws, Europe has got their trade secret directives. So and the Europe and of course the USA Defend Trade Secret Act was one of the last acts of President Obama. So you can see around the world more and more trade secrets are getting teeth. And then they can also be used in civil litigation as well, apart from the national laws.
We hear so much about, maybe technology taken by countries like China where they may duplicate things, other countries too. But are you saying now these are you could really have protection
Oh
and they'll
yes,
protect you if you're you citizen of Ireland where you're based or US?
yes, and like as you know, people say a lot about China and intellectual property theft, but over the years, China has also strengthened their IP laws in patents, in copyright, and trade secrets. So there's a lot more evolution in the Chinese laws on protection of IP. And this isn't for moral reasons. This isn't about that it's bad to be stealing people's ideas. It's in their economic self-interest. China wants to encourage foreign direct investment. And if you cannot trust your Chinese employees, you will only put low-level employment into China. But China wants to be more value-added activities. They want to have more R&D. So you are seeing companies putting much more R&D in China because they can trust the R&D IP laws in China.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. And now I'd love just to turn it over to Jessica because we did see um Bitcoin go over 100K for the first time this week. And now just digital currency and blockchain, we could say more complex than AI, right? I mean, there's just so many issues that pop up. But Jessica,
I was really curious, since you're talking about all this international law, with the advent of growing crypto interest and decentralization, how is IP, trade secrets, trademarks, how is all that going to get impacted or has it been impacted yet?
Well, there's a lot of IP around the infrastructure for crypto. And even like if you think about all the different coins, they have a name. That name is a trademark. So if somebody else uses that name, those coin makers can come after the people who are doing knockoffs under trademark law as well. So you're starting to see applications of this in those technologies. You're seeing all kinds of infrastructure for cryptocurrency, lots of technology being developed there. So that's also patent protectable. There's lots of copyright in it. So that's one part of it. The other thing as well is that blockchain itself can be used, for example, for evidence of ownership. So evidence of ownership, chain of title, all those kinds of issues are issues that were handled in very traditional ways in the IP world. But now there's a lot of interesting blockchain solutions coming up as well.
Have you seen an increase in the use of those compared to traditional methods? Has it impacted your business at all or what you teach?
Oh, it's definitely, this is continuing to evolve, and I'm in awe of the people who come up with these new ideas all the time. And that's the joy of what I do, is that because I'm at heart, I'm a geek, and I'm getting exposed to things that most of the world are not going to see for the next 5 years. And I'm getting this early view of them. And people ask me, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And all the excitement that they have, I'm there at the birth of that excitement.
Oh my gosh. So I'm really curious, what got you started? Because you have such a passion for it. Like when did your path diverge into IP and growing in that space?
Well, I've always been interested in technology and I've always been interested in business. I worked as an engineer for many years. I had international experience and built businesses globally. And along the way, I studied for an MBA. And one of the things I found interesting in the MBA was that economics and law were interesting, which I didn't expect that. So then I went back and I studied more law. And having this combination of the law, the business from the MBA, the engineering sides of things, that legal, technical, commercial, they intersect very nicely in an area that works very well for IP and especially licensing of intellectual property. So I moved into the area of IP and I got exposure to patent, trademark, licensing, and had experience at the highest levels and got involved in billions of dollars of transactions. So this is something that it was a gradual migration from manufacturing to technology transfer to working purely in the knowledge business as I am now.
Let me ask Raymond, because I feel there's an avalanche of information now in so many sources, right? How yeah, do you have a couple of go-to sites you want to check, right? I mean, I think it's kind of per vertical is different sources that we should check, but just for the audience, any recommendations on how to stay current in this crazy world we're living in?
Yeah, it's very difficult to give a kind of a one, two, three things that you need to do. Because if innovation came down to those one, two, three things, everybody would be doing it and none of it would be special. What becomes interesting as innovators is the people who understand the one, two, three, but they go off and do a four. And that's the difficulty about giving a very simple approach to it.
Right.
People ask me very often, can you use AI for your IP strategy? And what I'd say is that AI is very good at going out there and scraping all of the information that's out there. And they're picking up a high level of the correct information. And having the correct information is a very good position to be in. So if you can do that in an efficient way, it's already a good start. But
Right.
if you want to be in the top 1%, you probably do need something with a bit of flair.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like music that's created by AI. You always know it was created by AI. So when you
Right.
put a human in the mix, that creates that slight twist to it. And it just gives it that bit of flair and sets it apart. And it's the same with innovation, that yes, AI can bring you a certain distance with innovation, but still at the level that AI is at right now, there's that extra value of having the human in the mix.
Right. But okay, no, that's amazing. And then like IEEE and ACM for me was always kind of the go-to for trusted info. SIGGRAPH, right? The different, I guess keep an eye on those, but there's just so many sources now, right? So I guess it's combining those. WITI, of course, I'm sure is your number one. But
Yes, of course.
so that no, that's great. I think I think this is ever evolving conversation. I
Mhm.
do want to, in our next time we talk, and we'll share with the audience, get deeper into blockchain and how we can use the blockchain even to manage our assets within our company, right? So I just
Mhm.
Yes.
more and more we're going to see that as ways to raise money, ways to kind of protect our info and just lock it down within the blockchain. A lot of these documents and things you're talking about for trade secrets.
Mhm.
Yes, indeed. You've got smart contracts. You've got, especially with, inventorship and train of title and also global collaboration, that blockchain brings an extra dimension to that, which
Yeah.
can be very, very helpful.
Perfect. And last question before we go, because many of our members do work for larger companies, and now too, as we're seeing kind of the evolution, even of the product manager, product owner, they're getting closer to development. How can they internally? I think it's very much an advantage to them to be part of a patent and listed on the patent document, as well as for the company, I think to incentivize their people. Are there things you'd recommend to our audience, Raymond? Just if I'm an engineer at a company, or maybe I'm a product manager, or I'm a product owner, I help conceptually with the product that now is going to be patented, the technology. Do they just ask? Have companies been good at putting them on? I'm just not sure how that works internally. I'd love any insight.
Yeah, one of the things that I come across is that, especially in companies where they have a lot of smart people, that most people don't realize that what they're doing is really smart. Because compared to all the other people around them, that just seems like it's the normal thing. And again, with patents and inventors, people think that, yeah, I do these, clever puzzles and I'm working these things out. I'm finding solutions, but I'm not Edison. I'm not Einstein. So, the stuff I'm doing, that wouldn't be a patent. But very often, the stuff they're doing could be patentable. So if there is somebody you can talk to in the company, just to see that, even if it's not the whole system, this could be an improvement to a component to get something working a little bit faster, to get something that does some kind of better delivery. And anytime that you can come up with something which is a change or an improvement, and especially if there's a technical element in it, it's something that it could be material for a patent. And as an inventor, you're right that inventors should be credited. So if there's, if there's one person working on it, that's something, and the lone inventor is the stereotype. But most interesting inventions will have multiple inventors. So having the multiple inventors listed on this is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think as everything moves fast, these are the little
Oh,
things
yeah.
you have to pay attention to so we can all be prepared for the future. Thank you so much, Raymond. Awesome session today.
You're very
Jessica,
welcome.
and yeah, great.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, David. It cut out.
All right, I said, did you we get everything complete? I think it's good. I
I
think
I think so. I really enjoyed hearing about that because I have so many friends that do work in this space with companies that do create things that are patentable. And so I've heard that sometimes there's documentation within the framework that specifies whether you will or won't be credited, whether you will or will not be incentivized. And it sounds like maybe employees need to start being a little more proactive in having those conversations, is what I'm hearing from that last question. For sure.
yeah,
Absolutely, yes.
It's been
sure.
great. This has been great. You've been wonderful, Raymond. I've learned so much just on this call.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Raymond, and thank you, everybody. We do have, it's the first Friday of the month tomorrow, so we will be having the Link SV Where Did the Money Go session, as well as whenever you're listening to this. We'll have it the first Friday of the month. That's an important thing to track now, right? Where's the money
Mhm.
going? Who do we partner with? Who do we work for? Who do we form relations